Hello everyone, welcome back to the new video. In the previous videos we discussed about classes, objects, constructors, self. So in this video we will talk about the different variables that we have available inside the OOPS. I already mentioned about the names in my previous videos, like what are the different variables we have. So let's recall. So we have three kind of variables available inside the OOPS. So first is instance variable, second one is static variable, and third one is local variable. So what are instance variables? So instance variables are object level variable, static variables are class level variable, and local variables are method level variable. So when I say object level variable, it means this variable is going to be different for each object. That means if we want different copy for each object, then we are going to use the instance variable. And what are static variables? So they are class level variables. So that means this variable is going to be same for full class. So no matter how many objects are we are going to create for that particular class, this variable is going to stay same for all the objects. That means for all objects, if we want only one copy. And here this is method level variable, means if we want some variable within the method just for that particular method that we are going to call, then it's a local variable. So that means if we need variable inside the method to fulfill method requirements, so those variables are called local variables. So let's go with an example. So suppose I created a class person, and so I created a class person, and let me create a constructor def init. And we already studied in our previous video that the first argument to the constructor is always self. So let's say self, and let's pass argument like the person is going to have the name, and self dot name is equal to name. And let me create a method in which I am creating def one of self, and I am writing x is equal to 10 for I in range of x, print I. So all person are, you can say, homo sapiens. So let me define person scientific name, I guess. Yeah, person scientific name homo sapiens, SPIANS, sapiens. Okay, I created this class. So here when I called person scientific name homo sapiens, so no matter how many objects we are going to create for a person, that means no matter how many person are going to come, they are always going to be the homo sapiens. So this is going to be same for them. So this is a static variable because it's at the class level. So no matter how many objects we are going to create for this class, it's going to be homo sapiens, going to be the same. Now for objects that we are creating, they are going to have the different name. So they are going to different name. That means the objects that we are creating, they all going to have their individual copy of it, individual name. So that means it's object level. So now this means the name that we created, it's instance variable here, because it's going to be separate for each person that is going to come out. And here in the m1 method that I created, x is equal to 10 is locally, we are using it just within this method, m1 method. We cannot use it outside this method. So just because we are using it inside the method to fulfill the requirements for that for loop, that's why it's a local variable. So these are the three different variables. So we will discuss more in couple more minutes. Okay, so after variables, let's talk about the different methods that we have available. So I also discussed about the methods in my previous videos. So we have three different types of methods. First one is instance method. Second one is class method, and third one is static method. So what is instance method? As the name suggests, instance method, it is going to be object related method. The class method, it is going to be class related method, and the static method is going to be general utility method. So let's talk more about, so when we are going to use the instance method, so we are going to use the instance method if we are using at least one instance variable. So in our method, if we are using any instance variable, that means it's an instance method. Okay, and if we are not using at least one instance variable, so if we are not using at least one instance variable, that means it is class method or static method. It is either one of them. And how to decide it's class method or static method? Okay, so if we are not using any instance variable, but we are using static variable. If we are using static variable and not using an instance variable, then it is class method. Just listen to these terms and later on I will explain these with examples. And if we are not using any instance variable and any static variable, then this method is not related to object and class, and it is general utility method, and such method we have to declare as a static method, and such method we have to declare as static method. Okay, we just listen to these terms. So let's see one example. Suppose I created a class, not created, let me call this class from here. So this is the class that I created with a static variable and instance variable name with the constructor. So let me create a method called get name, and here I am taking self print. I will print person name, and here it is self dot name. Okay, so I created this method inside it. So we already discussed above, if the method is related to the object, then it's an instance method. And what does it mean? It means if it is using at least one instance variable. So here we have only one instance variable, and are we using that instance variable inside this? Yes, here we can see that we are using that instance variable, so that means it is an instance method. And we already discussed that instance method is object related method. Okay, let's create and let's call this p is equal to person, and there is one name. So what's the name of this person? Let's say bread, and I created this. So we created this object, so let's call this method. So this is object related, so let me call this p dot get name. Oh, it's saying person name is bread, so let me call another p1 is equal to person. What's this person name? Jackie. I create, and let me call p1 dot get name here. So this person name is Jackie. So whenever we calling this method on different objects, it is returning the, you can say, the variable that is using that particular object. So it's changing from object to object. So this is an instance method. So after seeing this method, we can say that if we are trying to access at least one instance variable, then this method is always talking about particular object, hence it is an instance method. And the second point is first argument to instance method is always self, which is reference variable to the current object. Okay, so now let me copy this, not copy this. Okay, now let me create one more method, def get scientific name, get scientific name, print person SCIEN scientific name is. So here we already saw that this is static variable and we have to access it. So how we can access a static variable inside the method? So let me just write it now, the person, whatever it is, let me just copy paste it for now. Okay, so when we access an instance variable inside a method, we all uses self, and self is pointing out to that particular object. And to access the static variable, we have to use a new reference variable that is going to refer to that. That particular reference variable is called CLS, and here, like self, we have to refer it using CLS. So this is a new term that I just introduced. So again, if I am using CLS here, and we already discussed that self, like first argument is always self, but name can be anything like delf, kelf, anything. So here it can be self also. If I put it self here, it can, Python virtual machine can think that it's an instance method and we'll consider it as a self. So to define or to say, or so that Python virtual machine know that it's not an instance variable and we are trying to access a static variable of the class, we have to use a special term, and that is called class method. Oops. Class method. So this is a decorator. After using this decorator, it tells the Python virtual machine that this is a class reference variable that we are using to access the class static variable of the class. It will not act as an instance method after using it. So once we used it here, so after that, let me execute this and let me call it here. So if it's a class method, so let's call it using a class person dot get scientific name. Person scientific name is Homo sapiens. Yeah, so this is the way that we can use, you can say this is the way that we can create a class method and access it. So what's the new thing that we learned here? To create a class method, first we have to use a special thing called decorator. This is @class method decorator. This decorator is going to tell the Python virtual machine that the first variable is, we are using it to access to the static variable of the class. Don't consider it as a self to access the instance variable. Please consider it as a class reference variable, and after using it we can call that particular class reference, that static variable. And to call a class method, we use the class because it's a class based method. So what we learned here, for every class, Python virtual machine create one special object called class level object. And what's the use of this object? It is used to hold class level data. And here CLS is the reference variable to that class level object. So let's understand what we wrote. So here let me create a class test, and here I am creating a class method @class method, here it is, and let me do def of m1 cls and print here id of cls. Okay, let me create another class method, and here it is def of m2 of cls, and here I am again printing id of cls. And now let us do print id of test and test.m1 and test.m2. After calling this, we can see that the address of the test m1 method and m2 method, it's all same, like 6192 6192 6192. So here we can see that the address of the class test where we created, that we can see here id of test, is same as the reference variable of m1 method and the reference variable of the m2 method. So they all are pointing to the same object or to the same address location. So it's again like a self pointing out to the current object that is using here. CLS is pointing out to the class object or to the class address. And again for this, instead of CLS we can use any name, but industry standard is using a CLS, so we will always prefer to use the CLS. Let's understand this with an, you can say a diagram or a graph. So as soon as we create a class, Python virtual machine will create an object for it. So as soon as we executed this particular person class, an object got created here. This is object for person class, and this object is going to hold all the static variables that are within the class. So here we have only one variable, person scientific name, so this is going to come inside this class. So who is going to create this object? Python virtual machine. So as soon as we created this class, we run it, Python virtual machine in the backend will run, and it will allocate a space or an object to hold all these variables. So because it's an class level variables, so it's going to only run once and it will hold it there, and we can access it many times. So that's why it's going to be always the same, no matter like in which method you are going to call it. So the address is always going to be same for that particular method in which you are using the static variables or this class level variables. So now the last method that is left is static method. Let's see this. So let me create a class student, and we already learned that they are general utility methods. So let me create a method called get average, and I am taking an average of what? A, B, comma C, and here I will return A plus B plus C by 3. I am taking the average. So how the Python virtual machine is going to know that this is a static method? Again, here we have to use a special thing called a decorator, and what's the name? Static method. If we are using this, then Python virtual machine will know that this is just a general utility method. So after running this, how we can use it? We can use like s is equal to student, because it's a general utility method, so we can again call it on the class dot get average, and get average of what? We need 3 variables, so let me do 2, 3, 4. After running it, and we will do like print of s, then we can get that average is 3.0. So this is a general utility method. I guess in this video I will keep until here. We learn about different variables and the different kind of methods. In the next video we will discuss in detail about the different variables, specifically instance variable and static variable, like where we can declare them, how to delete them, and all those things. So yeah, I guess this video was helpful. Have a wonderful day. I will see you everyone in the next video. Until then, take care. Bye.